Strap on those ghost goggles, everyone, because it is episode number 113 of Puppet Masters and Castle Freaks. And yes, I am aware that I did start this episode with the phrase strap on, but you know what? It's fine. We're doing it live. I am one of your hosts, spiritual scorchmark Jared Hornbeck, a smartass who unfortunately went to college. But you know what? I am not the only person who is here to talk about this haunted apartment building movie, question mark? No, who here is with me?
Well, I'm Steve Dudley, and get your underwear. This is the podcast about live mummification, closet goblins, and secret languages. That's because this is the podcast about Ravenwolf Towers, a bizarre, failed TV series that was kind of repackaged into an unfinished movie.
Sure was.
I think in the spirit of this episode, I think we just need to end the podcast abruptly in the middle of a conversation. We just need to cut it off halfway.
I was going to say that. I was going to be if we really wanted to capture the spirit of this, 25 minutes in, just have the feed go black.
Yeah. Really strange little project. We're going guestless this week because we just kind of wanted to fit another recording in to kind of build up our backlog. And so we just picked a random one off the sheet. This is a movie I think we were both a little curious about because I didn't really know much of anything about it. I knew that it had been a full moon streaming series and I knew it got turned into a movie. I did not realize they were kind of trying to do a early shared universe sort of thing, which we'll get into in more detail. But did you know much about this movie going into it?
No, not really. It was a title on the spreadsheet. And I went, okay, cool. I don't really know a lot about that. As you know, a full moon web series and things that they were trying to do when the streaming era started was not really an era that I was all that familiar with myself. And I thought about it and I said, well, why don't I know more about this one? And I realized that the timing of it, it's not really, we'll talk later specifically about how it's mentioned, but it's not really mentioned very much it came from the video aisle for a reason. And I saw the title and I went, that seems interesting. And then saw that there was, in true Baby Oopsie fashion, there was 3 episodes of this this was turned into a feature.
Yeah.
The audacity, by the way, of calling this the feature.
The feature. Yeah. They didn't call it the
hilarious.
movie. They did not call it the movie, though. They could have done that. And we've encountered this a couple of times. And actually, the full moon movies that we've watched that have been repackaged or readapted from this era of streaming movies have not been that bad for the most part. We got Piranha Women, which is kind of on the lower end of that scale, but we also got the Baby Oopsie movies, which I enjoyed way more than I should have. And we got Trophy Heads, which is one of my favorite movies we've watched on this show. So there is a precedent for kind of setting up these little miniseries as new movies. But I think the difference being with all of those movies, they got a chance to tell a complete story before they were released out into the world. And this one does not have that benefit.
No, it doesn't. And I it's really unfortunate because this is such a mixed bag of ideas and there's so much cool stuff in there. And it's if you read a description of what this web series was, it's not actually accurate because a lot of the descriptions were written with what the intention of the series was going to be. And so there are maybe glimpses and hints of what's to come. But unfortunately, we don't really get to we don't get to the fireworks factory as it is with this movie, really. And that being said, though, Steve, why don't you drop a couple of stats about Ravenwolf Towers for our listeners?
Happy to. Ravenwolf Towers, the feature, was released sometime between 2016 and 2017, depending on when you wanted to start that with. It's directed and written by Charles Band with a little assistance, once again, from Neil Marshall Stevens, who has been on an unbroken streak for us. I think maybe it's been broken as we're recording a little out of order, so it may have been broken, but we've been having a lot of Neil Marshall Stevens lately. This stars Shiloh Crevelling, and Evan Henderson, Maria Olsen, Michael Citroniti, George Appleby, Sonny King, William Paul Burns, Nihilist Jello, and Tarashi Lee. Now, I really was not able to find much about this project, which is a kind of surprising because you watch it and you kind of feel like there's a decent amount of ambition behind this thing. At least in the early going, I was a little confused, like in the opening credits when they're showing footage from like Kushner-Locke era, like full moon movies. So we see a little bit of the tiny head guy from Blood Dolls, and we see a little bit of Jackie Lavelle on the table from Hideous, you know, things like that. And then we get this long shot of Mr. Mascaro, the clown thug from Blood Dolls, who is a character in this movie, kinda.
I know, and you set up Mr. Mascaro and don't deliver. Like how unfortunate that is, because anyone listening knows how the fondness that we have for Blood Dolls, and like just seeing that character pop up again, I was like, okay, I'm glad that they're going back to this well for all the extended universe and world building. Like, yeah, go back to something that worked, like Blood Dolls, and have those characters pop up again for sure. That is a welcome from me.
And this, you know, Charles Band is always like got a, you know, kind of his finger on the pulse of what's going on, you know, like a true exploitation filmmaker. And this is kind of the real beginning of this sort of shared universe concept that sort of is dominating movies at this time between Marvel and DC and all these other different things, like all these characters interweaving with each other and messing with timelines to make them all fit together and all of that. So it makes sense that he would want to jump on that. I had to look up and see when this came out in relation to the TV show Castle Rock, which was kind of like Stephen King's version of this, sort of, you know, kind of like remixing a lot of his characters and putting them in the same world.
Castle Rock was, if memory serves me correctly, sometime around COVID, right?
It was after this. Yeah, it was after this. So it didn't, and I've never watched that show, so I don't know how similar or not like this concept is, but it did. I was thinking a lot of Stephen King because it also reminded me of his Dark Tower novels, you know, where after a certain point, they stopped being just standalone stories and they started being kind of this nexus for all of these kind of mysterious characters from other King works, you know. So we have guys from like The Stand and Hearts in Atlantis and all these other different projects that are all coming together and telling this larger story.
Yeah, and they didn't have to do that anymore because they made one perfect movie.
They did, yeah. No, they knocked it out of the park with a 85-minute Dark Tower movie, which is as long as that story needs to take. You can easily encapsulate that 7,000 book, you know, the 7,000 page book series into a 90-minute movie that was clearly edited down from a 2.5-hour film. Boy, yeah, that was a real like kind of like, all right, we have to make a Fantastic Four movie right now to hold on the rights kind of thing. That's definitely like a keeping the ball in the air movie, you know, that they probably spent $200 million on. Anyway, I digress. Yeah, so we this takes place in an old Los Angeles hotel, and it brings together characters from different corners of specifically the Kushner-Locke era of Full Moon. So we're not seeing any characters from like early Puppet Master Demonic Toys, but we are getting Dr. Lorca from Hideous, Mascaro from Blood Dolls, and a few others.
I'm sorry, Steve, I have to stop you. That's Dr. Lorca from Hideous and Demonic Toys 2.
Oh, that's right. Is it the same character? I knew it was the same
actor too.
Yeah, okay. I knew it was the same actor. I forgot.
I know it's the same actor. I don't know if it's supposed to be the same character.
Oh, I'm going to confirm that right now because I was confused about that.
Sorry,
I know,
I was
like
trying to make it, and I think you should leave joke. And for anyone that didn't land for, it just came across like I was very like sincerely stating that I didn't know if it was supposed to be the same character. It is the same character.
You are absolutely right. It is the same. It is the same character. Yeah, I did not know that. So yeah. Yeah, so that's great. I mean, they're keeping that kind of idea going, you know. I do have a suspicion that like the kind of weird cannibal family at the heart of this was originally supposed to be the Stackpoles from Head of the Family. And I think for whatever reason, maybe they didn't get the actors or some rights issue or got tied up. I have no idea why, but they didn't stick with it. And then instead they invented kind of their own sort of knockoff version of that. There were rumors that had the series continue, Jackie Lavelle was going to come back.
Yes, I read that as well.
Hideous. And I'm sure they were probably going to try and pepper in a few others had this really taken off. Unfortunately, the show was kind of unceremoniously canned after only 3 episodes, so we never really got to explore those possibilities. Some of the characters introduced here, like Ivan Ivanov, the vampire hunter played by George Appleby, he gets folded into later Puppet Master movies. Like he comes back playing that same character. But others like that mutated cannibal family kind of die with this project, and we never really get any resolution on any of that. Yeah, so this movie was very swiftly re-edited into a feature film, although this movie ends where the show ends. So they didn't shoot any new footage or offer any kind of resolution to the story. This is basically just like, why watch a season of TV when you can watch a movie for the exact same length of time? Like, there are even kind of ad breaks like built in to this movie still. And like we said, this isn't the first time that they've attempted that before, and they've been a little bit more successful in past iterations. You know, the Baby Oopsie movies maybe went on a little too long for what they were trying to do. Like, I don't know if we needed a whole trilogy of those, but I did enjoy like bits and pieces of that series. Yeah. And like I said, I think Trophy Heads rules and is like really underappreciated. And we get Maria Olsen from Trophy Heads back in this movie, so that's good to see her.
Yeah, she's fun. I mean, she's
always fun.
She's got a lot of fun energy. She's got a certain kind of character kind of nailed down that that she's good at playing, and so we have her again here playing something similar. According to the very, very brief little paragraph about Ravenwolf Towers it came from the video aisle. You know, that book was being written while this was in post-production.
Yeah.
And it says that 7 have been written with another 5 scheduled to be finished for a total of 12. I think that was maybe the initial idea. And then I feel like it was whittled down to then 6. And then of those 6, 3 were shot and edited and put out there. So really, I mean, we're very much dealing in a lot of ways with half of a movie.
Yeah, we really are. Yeah, no, it makes for kind of a frustrating experience as a viewer, because like, I think the more compelling threads that they're setting up here are abandoned largely. And we get a lot of like, you know, like anytime you're watching a TV series, there's usually a couple of like filler episodes, right? Like the structure of a TV season is you need to come in really strong with the first episode, grab people's attention, keep them like coming back and wanting more. I think this movie does that. It starts off in a way that like, okay, I'm compelled. I'm seeing all these characters who really have no right being in this world. Like, what is going on? Is this supernatural? Is this not? Like, there's all kinds of interesting stuff going on. But then like with any TV series, you get a couple of kind of filler episodes, you know, where you're establishing relationships, setting tone, like peppering in like supporting characters, things like that. You know, you're setting up threads for the rest of the season. Okay. And that format doesn't really work for a 90 or for an 80-minute movie, you know, because we're just kind of wasting time with characters that are not going to have any kind of payoff.
Yeah, that always seems to come in around like the second episode of a series. Like the pilot comes out, and a lot of times it's an extended length pilot. So it'd be like 2 hours or something like that with commercial breaks if it's on network television or basic cable, or, you know, it's an hour, 15-minute or something HBO pilot. And it's like, boom, this is what the show is. This is the premise. Here's some action, get you hooked. And then it's that second episode is always like takes a step back in terms of, it's like when you would watch a cartoon in the 80s, like you would watch like Thundercats or Ninja Turtles, and you'd watch the opening credits and be like, wow, this is the best animated thing I've ever seen. And then the show starts and you're like, well, where did all that money go?
It looks like paper dolls all of a sudden with like the mouths aren't moving at the same time. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So like that second episode always is kind of, it's a little bit of a step back and get to know the interpersonal relationships a little bit. And that's totally fine if you're HBO and you're hitting a 10 to 13 episode season, or I mean, I guess it's really okay. The one that comes to mind to me almost immediately is Lost.
Yeah.
Because Lost had this like incredibly grand 2-hour pilot.
Yeah.
And then I remember it like scaling back and taking some time to introduce the characters and show some of the character backstories that weren't introduced in the pilot. And not that I cared about that, but it definitely wasn't as sort of like frenetic as the pilot was. And yeah, you're right. That causes a real problem here, because the way that this thing kind of flows, it gets to probably its most interesting point at the moment when it fades to black and the end credits start.
Right. Yeah. They're really ramped up. I'm like, okay, yeah. And here's where we're setting up like the impressive sequel where we're going to bring all these threads together, and it just never happened. Well, I don't think there's any.
Not only that,
make it happen.
But it's like the Ravenwolf Towers, the feature. I mean, here's how you know that it doesn't even really work as a feature, because if you look at the IMDb description, it says a hotel worker uncovers the mysteries surrounding the strange guests that are staying at the Ravenwolf Towers, which include a clown, a vampire hunter, a mad doctor, a living doll, and a cannibal family that hold the secret to immortality.
Mhm.
Okay, we spend a lot of time with one of those groups
Yes,
and
yes.
no time with any of the other ones.
Like, okay, there is a living doll. We see it. It's kind of dressed like a Kaiser era, like German soldier with the pointy helmet. We see it moving around a little bit. It's in Dr. Lorca's lair, but he doesn't get to do anything. He's kind of just like around, like almost in the background. You know, the cannibal family is probably the one that we spend the most time with, but not even really the family so much as like this kind of bizarre matriarch situation, which I will say I found that reveal kind of fun. You know, so we kind of open, and there's actually some pretty like explicit sex scenes in this movie, like, which I'm still not really used to seeing in full moon movies.
Yeah,
like,
this one
like,
especially. This movie starts in media bed.
yeah, exactly. Yes. Yeah, exactly. And you know, so we're setting up this character of Mary, who's kind of this like beautiful, like coquettish woman who seems to be trapped in this tower, so that when the lunkhead Jake, who is the new like maintenance guy at the hotel, when he shows up, he's like suckered in by her whole act. And then of course she reveals that she's kind of like this immortal being, and not only that, she is the mother of the weird cannibal family, you know, even though she looks like significantly younger than any of them.
Yeah,
So,
that was a cool reveal. And I like inbred cannibal family. Part of me was hoping that there was going to be like an amputee mother strapped to a board under the bed, maybe
gotta love it.
in this. But like that's a trope that I enjoy. What are they called in Cabin in the Woods?
Oh,
they have the redneck murder
zombie family. Yeah, something like that. Yeah. And it's the Texas Chainsaw trope. It's the Hills Have Eyes trope. You know, like there's a lot of fun to be had there. And they're kind of like splitting the difference a little bit. They have the adults who are kind of like the Grand Guignol, like fancy older folks who are like dressed like Victorian times. And then they have kind of the mutant offspring. So Nihilus Gilo plays Samson, who is a big gross guy with like all this kind of like latex effects on his face, and he keeps eating people. And then you have the twins who kind of speak in their own like kind of babbly language and dress like Wednesday. So, you know, they kind of wander around the movie like chattering, you know.
Yeah, and I will say, like for a web series / streaming series that this was intending to be, the prosthetics look pretty good.
Yeah, no, not bad for what they're trying to do. You know, there's some stuff in here that I'm enjoying. You know, they introduced this new character named Ivan Ivanov, who is he's a dwarf and he is a vampire hunter. So I was not actually clear if the cannibal family in this is meant to be vampires. Are they vampires? Is that how they're living so long? Or are they just kind of, they just have the secret to life?
The word vampire is thrown around a lot. So, and the fact that Ivan Ivanov is even here would tell me to believe that that's where that's going, but that reveal doesn't actually happen.
Yeah, it doesn't. But I enjoyed the George Appleby performance of this character, because he just kind of like, he looks like a goth kid and he talks like Morpheus, and he's just kind of like wandering through this movie with all his weird gadgets and his cape. And like, you know, there are all these like oddball characters in this movie that nobody's really blinking at, you know, like I would personally be alarmed if there was a guy dressed like the Joker who just like lived in the apartment building and he never took his makeup off and he never dropped the kayfabe and he just kind of stands in doorways and stares, which is really all William Paul Burns gets to do in this movie.
I know, it's so unfortunate.
Did he even have a line of dialogue? Did I catch? I don't know if I caught one. Yeah,
no.
He's just kind of there, and it's like, I understand they're like seeding something that's going to happen later in the series, and it doesn't happen. But I'm like, man, you cannot just drop that guy into your universe and then not mention him or deploy him in any way.
Yeah. And while we're talking about Ivan Ivanov, feel free to jump on to Spotify, comment, or email us at puppetmasterscastlefreaks@gmail.com. But I know that there is a similar character and I'm sincerely saying I don't know if it's supposed to be the same character this time, of a little person played by Phil Fondacaro in Decadent Evil, and maybe
Yeah.
even in the sequel too, which I think is, I'm speculating maybe is also Ivan Ivanov. So there's
I'm
kind of another
wondering.
interconnection there. If you know definitively if it is or it isn't, feel free to comment on that, because obviously when we do the show, we're not trying to do like a, hey, I looked at all of like the first 3 Marvel phases in chronological order. Like we're spinning the wheel, we're putting stuff in the spreadsheet, guests are picking episodes, and with the exception of like the big franchises, we don't do things necessarily in the order that they're set or the order that they were made. And you guys know that we haven't seen everything.
No.
So that being said, there's going to be times, maybe we know Charles Band loves to build a universe. There's going to be times when a character is going to be referenced or something, and we may miss it, or we may falsely attribute it to something else. So obviously feel free to correct us on any of that, or, give any other insight that you might know about why these particular characters come back in this particular web series.
And I am reading on the Decadent Evil Wikipedia page that is supposed to be the same character. That is Ivan Burroughs, who appears in Decadent Evil 1 and 2. And by this point, Phil Fondacaro retired. Like, he has not done a movie since 2009. So I just imagine he passed on returning. So they cast a different actor. But it is supposed to be the same character.
Yeah. And I will say, like, we have a lot of love for Phil Fondacaro.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But I like this performance as well.
I do. Yeah, no, I enjoyed this performance. I enjoyed a lot of the performances in this movie. I think everybody's having fun. There's the crazy, like, who's the hotel manager or something, who's always like ranting and like kind of like sucking his teeth and like looking crazy. Like, he was fun. Like, he's just kind of like, I know that this guy's a professional actor, but he brings the energy of like a guy they found off the street and just like, hey, want to be in a movie? Like, and he's bringing a lot of like manic, like tinfoil hat energy to that performance, which I thought was a lot of fun.
Well, he wouldn't like you, Steve, because you're a college boy.
That's true. He wouldn't like me. Would not like me. What else is there really to say about this movie? Like, I did note that like some of the framing and some of the blocking of the scenes in this movie are really funny, because there's a moment specifically where the Shiloh Crevelling's character like takes her top off. There's a love scene getting ready to happen between her and Jake, and you could see like he is blocking her like as she's taking off her dress, and you could almost hear Charles Band off screen going like, "Kid, move over, little more." Because he keeps taking like little side steps just to show it's like one boob. Okay, there's 2 boobs. No, a little more, kid. Come on. No, we want to see him. Come on, move over a little bit. So there's some really funny like blocking mistakes like that left into the movie. And I was just so excited to see all of these threads that they were kind of like queuing up pay off, and they didn't really do it. But I did love that this is a movie that unironically has a disembodied voice that whispers Eve.
Yeah, not since New Year's Evil has someone so emphatically whispered evil.
And then it just becomes part of like the score after a little bit. It gets kind of like worked into the beats of it,
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
well, I think I am similar to Charles Band in a way that like I'm sort of endlessly fascinated with the shadows of old Hollywood.
Yeah.
The juxtaposition of kind of like the classic golden era, silver screen, all that stuff, with a lot of the like truly heinous stuff that went on behind the scenes. And so there's always the ghosts of the past when it comes to talking about old Hollywood.
Yeah.
And I could tell, that's sort of what he's channeling here and in a lot of other projects too. Like, obviously you can't watch this and not think about The Dead Want Women.
Yeah, I was thinking about that one a lot.
I mean, and then there's obviously when you're working in a sense of like, okay, well, there's this building and the building itself is an entity, you can't help but then expect like there's going to be a scene where the camera's going to come around a corner and there's going to be a hallway and there's going to be twins standing in the hallway. It's coming.
Yeah.
And it's there, obviously.
Yeah.
But I think like, I think we talked a little bit about in the episode for The Dead Want Women about the St. Francis Hotel and Fatty Arbuckle and that whole thing. And like, I just feel like Charles Band is obsessed with this notion of like the stuff going on behind the scenes back then, and I'm okay with that. The idea of this haunted apartment complex where all of these people lived and were killed, I'm totally fine with that. I don't even really need the world building aspect. I don't need a killer clown or a living doll. Like,
No.
I'm fine with that's I think the thing that ultimately you can see why maybe this was as frustrating as it is to watch the unfinished product, how it might have been frustrating to make also,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
because it's hard to find something to focus on when it's such a kitchen sink product. If there's so many different elements to it, that I can totally understand them being like, all right, well, we're getting up to episode 4 now, and like, what are we doing really with all of this stuff? And
Yeah.
I can understand why it was shelved, and then, no offense, Charlie, but very cynically recycled as a feature so that you can kind of like bleed this one a little bit more for for whatever it's worth.
For sure, for sure. And I will say they have a great poster art that they put
Mhm.
together for the feature. That's really kind of exciting and cool. And yeah, I agree with like the old Hollywood kind of like historical LA atmosphere of this. I really enjoy that. And I think that was kind of the most satisfying part about The Dead Want Women too, is just sort of like this really lurid look back at this era in time that we kind of gloss over.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, and maybe I'm just looking at this now like we're fully 10 years more so into this whole kind of shared universe thing, and I think we're all just kind of over it at this point. We're just like, yeah, I don't want to have to like go to Wikipedia every time I'm watching a movie just to understand what I'm following. I kind of just like want to be able to watch a movie. And this one is not really going to give you that juice, but I can appreciate it this time. Like, Charlie Band is really good at building a brand, and he's had a couple of bites at this shared universe apple in the past. He did Doll Man versus Demonic Toys. He did Mandroid and Invisible all together. Like he's been toying with this kind of concept, and as a Marvel Comics fan, you could understand why he would want to like tie all this stuff together. Yeah, I don't know. This one just didn't really click for me outside of a couple of interesting moments. So. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there was a lot to like in it. Like you said, there are some errors that were left in with blocking or framing of shots for sure. But I did feel like, obviously, Maria Olsen's performance as Mabel was, anytime she was on screen, I felt like she's commanding. I felt like we've felt that way with her in Trophy Heads. And I
Yeah.
think she does a good job playing a certain kind of character. Evan Henderson, who plays Jake, a little too much Corey Cunningham energy for me.
Okay. Yeah, I could
Yeah,
see it.
it
I
was
could
like,
see it.
and which, you know, as time has now passed between Halloween Ends and present day,
Yeah.
I look back on that one and be like, this could have been one of the better Halloween sequels. I don't mind introducing the character of Corey. Just why would you do this as movie 3 of a trilogy?
Yeah. Why would you do it this late? Like, yeah, and just kind of cram it in and then just sort of like sideline everything you've been setting up the rest of that trilogy. Yeah.
Right. And I felt like everyone's initial reaction was like, what, who is this character? Why are we getting this? Which I think is fair. With some time now between the movie and now, it's like, all right, Corey, not the worst character. That aspect is actually kind of fun. And I think it's what kind of sets it apart from Kills. And even I would say the first David Gordon Green, which I don't like.
Yeah,
But
no,
like,
I really don't like any of those movies, but
to
I
be
feel like
clear, I
yeah,
don't really like Halloween Ends, but
no,
I
no.
feel like there's a seedling of a cool idea, and it's like it's just unfortunate that they're exploring it as the third movie when they're supposed to be wrapping up a trilogy, and it kind of presents in a way that where it's like, who could possibly care about this now? Uh,
And
I
I felt bad for Rohan Campbell, who is the actor who plays him, who I thought was good in the part. And I think he's been, he was really fun in The Monkey recently. And he's going to be playing the lead in the remake of Silent Night, Deadly Night,
yeah.
which is going to be pretty fun. Like, I like him as an actor. I felt like he got kind of like some of the brunt of that hate, he was getting kind of Jar Jar Binks a little bit. And I'm like, yeah, no, this is not a great character. This is not really your fault. I think you're doing a good job and you're doing what this movie is asking you to. It's just kind of delivering it way too late.
And while we're on this mini tangent, I saw someone post something the other day about how Jackie Earl Haley was a fine Freddy, but he was just let down by the script. And I thought
Yeah.
about that. No, I thought about that and I went, no, that's not true. He's a bad Freddy. I'm sorry.
I always liked him as
bad
Freddy.
Freddy. No, he's a bad Freddy in a bad movie. I think the script sucks, the movie sucks, but I also don't like the performance. I think
Oh,
there's something I like Jackie Earl Haley as an actor. And
yeah.
I've said I think I've probably even kind of said without really thinking about it. I feel like that was kind of the this is how you're conditioned to feel about this movie, is that he's good and the movie's not.
Mm.
And I feel like I've said that before. And I actually thought about it and I was just like, man, England brings this sort of gravitas to the character. And I felt like Jackie Earl Haley's was so like meekish and like, I don't know. There was something about the more I sat with it, I was like, I don't think I like that performance. Like, I hate the movie.
Yeah.
And I think the script is terrible. But I don't really think the performance is that good. This isn't like an Iron Lady or Darkest Hour situation.
I mean, I would like to see Jackie Earl Haley as Margaret Thatcher in
Well,
the
here
Freddy
we go.
makeup.
That's
like,
what I
there.
was.
Now
Yeah.
we're cooking. Now we're cooking. I did like Haley's performance in that. Like, but it is a movie I have not really gone back to because I find it so overwhelmingly terrible.
Repugnant.
There's a reason that the early Freddy movies did not zero in on the child molester element of his character. They kind of glossed over that, they didn't really make that explicit. And for that movie to focus entirely on him, like he's not just a murderer, he is a pedophile, and we need to really focus on him being a pedophile, and we need to make this about trauma, and we need to make this it's a drag. It is a bummer to look at. It is a bummer to watch. And
it sure is, and I'm mad at myself for bringing it up. Anyway, back to
well, we were on a
Towers.
reboot kick, and there's not a whole lot to talk about with Ravenwolf Towers, if we're being honest.
This is one of those that we've ended up here a few times where it's almost more fun to talk about what could have been. It's kind of the way you have to approach an episode like this, is because what they ended up giving us is not a lot. There's glimpses of things where I think, aside from small continuity mistakes or blocking or framing mistakes, it looks pretty good. I think it's lit decently. It looks higher quality than a lot of the contemporary full moon stuff that was coming out of the time. And one last person I want to highlight is it's unfortunate we get so little of it so late. Tarashi Lee's performance, I think, is really fun. And it's like she's introduced in, I guess, what we can call the last act.
Yeah. And she's fun, and she's a firecracker, and she's just got like a lot of energy, and it's like bringing a lot to this movie, and we don't really get much of anything out of her. The movie just kind of ends before we can really sort of unleash what that character is going to do, which is a shame because again, they were setting up all these things that I was excited to see pay off. I wanted to see Mr. Mascaro like come in and say something in a gravelly voice and then move on. It's not like he was like a mystically endowed character or anything, but like that kind of made it all the more interesting. Like, why are you here? Why are you in this mix? Like, are you representing the little head guy from Blood Dolls? Did you bring your Blood Dolls with you? Are they in the room right now? Like I wanted to see some of that stuff. I loved the idea of Jackie Lavelle coming back because her character from Hideous was really, really fun. I hope she still fits into the gorilla mask, and the
leather vest.
And the way, exactly. Yeah, the classic leather vest, There are all kinds of very interesting threads that just didn't get pursued, unfortunately.
Yeah, I almost wish that there was some kind of companion piece to this that we could have lumped in with this episode, because I started watching it and I was like, all right, 79 minutes, that's kind of par for the course.
Yeah.
But really it's, you're getting 3 essentially 25-minute or slightly less with Probably each one of these, I imagine, when they aired, had a protracted credit sequence.
Oh, I'm sure.
So
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
getting like a 23, like 22-minute episodes with beginning end credits in all three of them. And
Yeah.
when you put it together into the 79-minute movie, it's real, like it's wild to me that they felt like it was acceptable to repackage this and repurpose it and try to pawn it off as something that it's not, because I I feel like, listen, Full Moon fans are Full Moon fans.
Yeah.
Like, they know what's going on. If this is a web or streaming series that hit a roadblock and is ending, they're going to know that. They
Yeah.
keep up with the website, they keep up with the news of what's going on. The thing I don't like about the way that this is purposed is it feels like it's trying to dupe people who don't know better into paying for a Blu-ray or paying for a DVD of this, because they're going to think, oh, what's different? What footage was shot and added to this?
Yeah.
What is there going to be some kind of crazy commentary? Is it going to come with like special features where they talk about and storyboard what the remaining scripts would have done? Is there anything? And if anything, there's less,
Yeah.
because it's trimming the opening and closing credit sequences from this. And to me, that just kind of bothers me a little bit, because I understand the business model. I understand you want to make money. You're trying to consistently have products, but not everything that you do is going to, not every idea or seedling you have for a series or have for a movie is going to come to fruition. But I
No.
think part of the fun of exploring Full Moon is looking at what worked, what didn't work. So this almost existing as a 3-episode curiosity that then got shelved makes it more interesting to discuss, because then you can speculate about what happened. When you're then putting it out as a feature, it's almost like you wrapped it up and said, well, that didn't really work, but
Yeah.
you got to make money off this somehow. And I don't know, like it's one of I feel there's a cynicism to that I don't like. It's fine that they didn't get it finished, but it didn't need to be repackaged this way.
No. No, not really.
I feel like
Well,
people would have been up on it. Like they would know that this was going on. Like I just, that kind of bothers me, because it takes away from the fact that, there's a lot to like in here. I mean, Michael Citrinini, is that how you say his name? I always
Citronidi, I
forget.
believe. Yeah.
Yeah, Citriniti. Dr. Lorca is a fun character. I mean, our
Who doesn't love a
introduction to
mad
him,
scientist? Yeah.
right, and our introduction to him was backwards, because we did um, Demonic Toys 2 before we did Hideous on the
Yeah.
show. But like the Dr. Lorca character in Hideous and his relationship with Jacqueline Lavelle's character is a lot of fun. And there's, it's almost like Charlie has to know that fans are going to embrace things he's trying to do. The reveal of Dr. Lorca
Mm-hmm.
is one that's supposed to be a moment where Full Moon fans get excited, because it's this character that they've spent time with before. He's looking down, he looks up, he's very centered in the camera, almost looking directly at the camera, as if that applause sign is about to light up and say, like, this is where you give it up for one of your old favorite characters coming back. And he's not given a ton to do like a lot of these people. I feel like Nihilist Jello and Maria Olsen and the twins and they're the ones who are focused on the most. And obviously, Shiloh Kreveling as Mary
Mm-hmm.
probably has the most uh, dialogue and has to do the most. I not want to say heavy lifting, because I don't know that I feel anything in here is heavy lifting.
No,
She has
no.
to kind of play it where she is like a young, attractive woman in the current day, but also speaks sort of like the way in Gloria Swanson or old aging screen actress would have spoken.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's a little bit of that, which is fun for like imagining her as like this old Hollywood figure who's just sort of like never died, That's kind of fun.
Yeah, and that photograph of her and not what's the name of the father?
Oh, I forget. Chibari or something like
Jabari,
that.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was like, I know it was something a little unorthodox, but like the photograph then of Mary and Jabari is introduced so late, and it's like a cool element. It's like this reveal of, oh well, she looks very much like someone I knew in my past or something like that. And it's like, oh, that's Mary. And this is all happening when there is under 3 minutes probably before end credits.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. Yeah, and I don't know if Shiloh Crevelling is acting anymore. It looks like she hasn't had a credit since a 2018 David Dakota movie. So that's kind of it for her. I'm curious if she's going to get back into it. I think she's
Long
very
time.
striking. She's very interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I think there could have been something interesting there.
And a connection we didn't make yet about this movie is we talked about the opening, how the movie starts with a sex scene, but it's Cody Renee Cameron in that scene, who is of course Barbie in all of the Barbie and Kendra movies, and
Oh, of course, that is her.
we will
Okay.
cover a handful of those. We really only did Corona Zombies so far, and with it not even being advertised as Barbie and Kendra Meet the Corona Zombies or whatever title they gave it. But we've
Yeah,
got Area
yeah.
51 to go to. We got to crash Joe Bob's Jamboree still.
We got to meet the Tiger King, Yeah, yeah. That's going to be real, like, travel log back to the pandemic. Like, it's a real, like, visit to an era that I'm really trying not to think about anymore.
No,
But,
it's so
God bless
true. I
'em.
mean, we say all the time that our show is evergreen because
Yeah.
somebody, 10 years from now is going to be, I mean, podcasts are presumo, if we're all still alive in 10 years, I mean, I'm being very presumptuous,
Big if. Yeah,
but
yeah.
also if podcasts are also still a format 10 years from now, somebody is going to be getting ready for the 45th anniversary of Puppet Master and is going to be looking into some Puppet Master content potentially. And most things are evergreen. I can tell you right now, Barbie and Kendra Meet the Tiger King, not evergreen.
Not evergreen. That one is stamped in time. Yeah, yeah, very much so.
To the point where it's actually a dated reference already.
Yeah,
So
it already kind of
it's not
like it
even
was
current
built in
now.
with it that it was in dead. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was kind of built in. Yeah, it's definitely interesting. But we will get to all of those. Do we have any final thoughts on Ravenwolf Towers? I think we're comfortable making this a slightly shorter one.
Yeah, there's a lot to like in this. There are elements that seem super fun, and I don't really mind the kitchen sink aspect of it, especially if they originally said we're planning on having this thing stretch across 12 episodes.
Yeah.
I could have got behind that. You watch it at your own pace. You're introduced to things at your own pace. Much easier, I feel like, to consume a 6-hour 12 episode series than it is to consume 1 4-hour movie when you're dealing with something like this kind of project. But
Yeah.
I think it's a frustrating watch because it's one of those times where you just find yourself talking about what could have been, where they could have gone with these characters, and there's so many setups, and because of the truncated nature of this, there are literally no payoffs.
Yeah.
For anything that's set up. It's not even like they see out one storyline to fruition. It's just a bunch of balls are juggling and then they just fall out of the air simultaneously.
Yeah, for sure.
And so that's kind of my final thoughts is like I didn't hate watching it for 79 minutes. It's just when you know that this is an unfinished thing and that it's going to end there, it almost makes it pointless because it's like, why even get invested in anything that's going on when it's just going to fade to black and Don't Start Believing is going to start playing. It's like,
right.
Why? I'm just kidding. That was actually a very good finale, and I will stand by that. But yeah, for this a shorter episode, obviously on our end, because there's not a lot to talk about what's actually there. Everything is speculative. Unfortunately.
Yeah, it's a shame. Yeah, no, I love the ideas here, but it just kind of didn't really come together. But thank you everybody for listening to us. Where can people find all of our stuff?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked, Steve. Well, if you're a fan of what we do, then you can go onto Apple Music or Spotify and give us a 5-star rating. And if you're feeling really generous, throw a little review in there as well. It just helps us get the show out to that many more people and helps us build our audience. And we're always very appreciative every time we see reviews pop up on Apple Podcasts, or if you have another podcatcher that allows you to review shows as well. We like reading comments on Spotify. I know that's kind of a new way to engage directly with shows, and people don't do it for every episode. That's totally fine. But if you do in the moment think of something that you want to say to Steve or myself, then leave us a Spotify comment. Let us know that you're listening if that's the way that you're consuming the show. If you want to keep up with us and know what we're up to, the best way is Instagram. You can follow the show at puppetmasters_castle freaks. You can follow me at _Giallo_Jared, or Steve at Minotaur Matador. Threads, Blue Sky, YouTube, anywhere else that you type in the name of the show, you should be able to find us. Maybe at some point we'll have some more visual YouTube comment, but not right now, because doing one podcast is hard enough work, but Steve has a second podcast that he has to do work for. Steve, what show is that I'm talking about?
Well, that show is called Cinema Arcade. That is cinema and arcade mashed together. That is what we do. We're watching movies and playing the games based on those movies. So we recently covered Jerry Seinfeld's Immortal B movie. Dear Lord, that was a tough one to sit through.
How much time did you spend on the gigantism fetish?
We didn't address that part of it directly, but there is definitely a lot of talk about human relations, which is definitely something that movie is setting up, to the point that Seinfeld actually apologized for that. But we've also got fun stuff coming up soon on movies like Muppet Treasure Island and Jackass, and a lot of other things like that are going to be a lot of fun. So definitely check all of those out, and be sure to check us out as well, because we've got a fun one coming up this week. We are going to be talking about a movie called The Haunted Casino, aka Dead Man's Hand. I really think they weakened the title by changing it to The Haunted Casino. It now sounds like a Mary-Kate Ashley Olsen vehicle, and not like a horror film starring Sid Haig and Michael Berryman, which is what it actually is. So yeah, we'll check that one out. We're gonna have a fun guest on that one, and it's gonna be a good time.
Yeah, it went from being something, Dead Man's Hand with those guys, of being more akin to, like The Hills Have Eyes or something like that, but or Devil's Rejects if we're talking about Sid Haig. But
yeah,
it definitely plays more like the title of a Goosebumps book now.
Definitely, absolutely.
Not that there's anything wrong with that, and
nothing wrong with that. It's just a different vibe. It's just a different vibe. Yeah.
And we'll have a very fun guest on that episode as we get back into our guests. You guys have noticed we've had a few guestless episodes. We'll be sprinkling those in from time to time as well, because we know you guys love spending time with just Steve and myself, which we appreciate so much. And so hopefully we'll see all of you back here next time for The Haunted Casino, aka Dead Man's Hand. Yeah, that title is much better.
Also, I'm going to retitle it again. It should have been called Roll Them Bones. There we go.
Yeah.